Welcome back to Big Dan's Airgun Review channel. Today we're carrying on our budget rifle series and we'll be taking a look at the Milbro Sportsman. Now this is a slightly more expensive rifle than the Explorer we looked at the other day. That was SRP'd around £109, whereas the Sportsman is around the £140 mark. So I thought, why not get this out? It's still technically budget, and let's have a look and see what the rifle's capable of. I've been wanting to look at these for a little while as well, because they're a very, very sturdy rifle when you actually hold the thing and put it to your shoulder. And there's something about its lines that reminds me of the air guns that I shot when I was a child, some of like the older British guns and things like that. So I thought, why not get it out and let's do a review of the old girl. So, let's crack on with our Milbro Sportsman review. And as always, we'll start with features, then move on to handling, chronographing, accuracy test, and then we'll give our final verdict. So let's see what £140 will buy you out of the Milbro range. Let's move on. So then, features. As always, we start off at the rear of the rifle. As you can see, the rifle comes with a rubber butt pad, which is quite nicely formed, fits into the buttstock of the rifle quite nicely, and it is also grooved for a bit more traction. Moving further along, you can see the comb on this rifle is quite low, and it's definitely more of a sporter design stock than something like a target gun with a big chunky cheek piece and things like that. It's a very old school cheek piece, what you can see what's on there. A bit further forwards, you can see the checkering, which is actually, although it's not as deep as what you may find on Virearcs or Air Arms or things like that, it is actually quite deep and it's quite nicely figured as well, but we'll touch a bit more onto that on the handling section. Moving further up, you have an automatic safety, and it's very similar to the safety what you'll see on our other Milbro reviews with the Tracker Hunter and the Target Master, and it's an automatic hammer style safety, but again we'll talk a bit more on that when we get to the handling section. Then we get to the trigger. Don't let the hole in the trigger guard fool you. This is not an adjustable trigger. It is advertised as a two-stage, but we'll talk a bit more about that when we get to the handling section. Moving slightly further along and up, you can see you've got a standard dovetail rail and an anti-creep block at the rear, which is always a nice little feature. Bit more checkering up front, again, nicely figured, very old school at the same time, the pattern and the design of it, and also deeper than what you'd give it credit for. The rifle also comes with a full set of fibre optic glow sights. You can see them glowing away quite proudly now, and you can see if we move further along to the end of the barrel, there's the foresight, and you can see that little red bead glowing up as well. As you can see, the rifle is a 2.2, what we've got on offer today, and it is definitely a break barrel. It's very old school, I'll put it that way. It's a very traditional sort of, I won't say English, but a very traditional sort of rifle, and that's, again, like I said, why I thought it would be great to put it in this review when we're doing our budget series. So that's the features of the rifle out of the way, but why don't we get this thing weighed and see exactly what we're going to be dealing with? And because, as we know, weight is a major part of any rifle. It can be a make or break situation depending on the actual weight, if it goes to the extremes, if it's, in my case, too light, or in many people's cases, a bit too heavy. So let's get the scales out and let's see just how heavy this monster is. So let's move on to weighing. So then, on the scales, let's see what the Sportsman comes out at. And as you can see, there's a reason why I said monster earlier, and that's because despite how it looks, the Milbro Sportsman is actually quite the substantial rifle. So 7.88 pounds, that's pretty, it's up there. It's not Virearc HW97 heavy, but it's not as far behind as maybe you might have liked. Because of this, I probably wouldn't, or I would immediately probably say that I may not recommend this for maybe youngsters into the sport as a starting rifle or anything like that, because it is definitely a bit of a brute. But as we always say, weight can be mitigated by balance. So let's put it to the shoulder, let's put a scope on top, and let's see how the thing really feels. Let's move on to handling. So, handling. What do we think of the Sportsman, as per always, when it's put to the shoulder? Well, first thing I'm going to mention is like what I said earlier about the checkering. The checkering is really nice on your thumb. Again, it's not what you'll find on premium brands out there, it's not as deep as that, but the overall pattern and the feel of the thing, and the feel of the wood in general, I would say it is better than what you'll find on some of the other budget offerings around this price range, say the XS19s and things like that. It has got a really nice feel to it. The gun itself has got a really nice and solid, chunky sort of character about it. It's not like some of your more modern sort of budget guns where you can tell, what's a good example of this? some of the Noricas, some of the earlier ones and the cheaper ones, they've got a sort of thin feel to them. And it's the same with the. My cousin actually has and nothing against the gun. It's a nice gun. It does shoot well. He's got a Gammo Hunter 440, I think it's called, and that was the same. It's a thin feeling thing. Handles well, nice and light, but a bit skinny. Whereas this, it's got a bit of a brutish feel to it. It's a nice thing to put into your shoulder, and like I said, the checkering on your fingertips is really, really nice. Now, it's not just that where this gun surprises me. Not just because, again, we said it's cheap. You expect it to feel cheap, when it doesn't. When it's put to the shoulder. Don't get me wrong. Like we said, the stock is maybe it could do with being oiled a bit, make it a little bit darker, and that will come up really, really nice. But it's got, you can tell it's a maybe slightly more budget area or sector gun. But it's not just the feel and such of it that reminds me of some of the older guns we used to shoot, like in years gone by, sort of thing, where there was a bit less penny pinching maybe when guns was being designed. And the other reason why I say that, or what makes me think that, is, I hope you can see that. Look at the thickness of the cocking arm on this thing. When you see a lot of the more modern guns, with the budget end guns, or if you've got one, take a look at the cocking arm. And what you'll either have is one cocking arm which is quite thin, or what they do sometimes do, I think the XS19 is the same, they'll have two thin ones almost bolted together to try and make it a bit thicker, sort of thing. Whereas with this on the Sportsman, it's just one solid lump of metal in there. I like that. That's great. It gives the rifle a feeling that it's going to go on for years and years and years and years. So, let's move on now and let's talk about cocking the thing and shooting the thing. Well, the cocking effort is an absolute walk in the park. It's, well, I don't even think, as we said, teenagers and such won't even have any major issues with that. In fact, let's just get rid of this. Let's have a go at the shot cycle as well, and I'll elaborate on what I was about to talk about. Automatic safety. In fact, a lot of the modern guns, you have to give them a tap to break the barrel, whereas this is a lot more, once again, old school. No need for that, just bring the thing down, it will come down for you. Brilliant, couldn't ask for any better. Now, let's move on to the actual shot cycle and the trigger, because Milbro, the way they've made their rifles, they're a very strange company. It's the ones that we get in, it's usually they have so many brilliant positives about them, such as, for instance, we had the Explorer earlier that shot beautifully for the price of it, and it was a nice gun, but there was a few little odd quirks with it, sort of thing. This is no different. That's the same. You'll see we reviewed the Tracker Hunter and the Target Master, and the oddities with those, they was built lovely, to be honest. Didn't like the safety warnings on the side of the Target Master, granted, but you had the adjustable cheek piece there. The stock, other than that, had a real premium feel to it. It was a lovely feeling stock, but the trigger let it down. The Explorer, which is one of the cheapest guns they make, actually has a better trigger than the most expensive guns they make. And sadly, budget guns, you know it is an Achilles heel. The trigger is what lets this down a little bit. It is a two-stage, supposedly, but it's a non-adjustable unit. And out the box, again, maybe running in it might smooth out a little bit, but safety again. But it's a heavy, creepy old unit. It really is. The pull weight on the thing is a bit extreme, and to me, it's advertised as a two-stage. To me, it feels more like a single-stage unit. It's not. Oh, need a bit of a clunk to close. It's not the smoothest, even budget trigger that I've ever shot. It is consistent though, consistent-ish. You do know roughly when it's going to go off. You feel it does get a bit heavier, then pop, off it goes, but it's not a massively pleasant experience. It's pretty heavy pretty much all the way through until you do finally feel it get even heavier, and then off she goes. So the trigger is definitely, it's a bit of a work in progress, we'll put it that way. Milbro, if you're watching this, get the the Explorer's trigger, put it to the Sportsman. In fact, put it on the Tracker Hunter and the Target Master as well, because I wasn't a big fan of that one either. Put those triggers on this, you're golden, absolutely golden. But here's another cool feature, here's another redeeming thing, and that actually is that automatic safety. You can see here, it's the hammer style safety, as I like to call it, the same as what you saw on the Tracker Hunter and the Target Master. And as you can see, this is it in its safe position. it won't fire. Safety engages each time you cock the rifle. To disengage the safety, just simply flick it down like so, and off she goes. And then you can pretty much just squeeze the trigger for a long time. There it goes. And then recock it. Hopefully you might be able to see that. The safety's flicked itself back up again. And the safety is once again automatically engaged. But, and this does happen quite a lot in a hunting scenario, I used to do a lot of rabbit pest control and that sort of thing myself a few years ago. Every now and again, with an automatic safety that you can't reset, you'd flick the safety off, and then you're sat with a live air rifle, and again, we used to do it a lot on a Land Rover Defender, and that was a bit of a scary time, we'll put it that way. But with this, with the Milbro, flick it, and it's safe again. And again, once again, if you want to shoot your intended target, it comes back into view, flick it back down, and you're ready to go. The safety itself is plastic, admittedly, but again, it is a very budget-ended gun. But it's very slick to use. It's quite satisfying actually flicking that up, and you can hear it gives a nice clonk when you do it. So overall, handling-wise, what we've covered so far, it's 75% will say positive. It's nicely made, it's really chunky to hold. It cocks easily. You need a little bit of extra muscle just to close it up. That clunk at the end there, what you saw me forgetting that with one of the times I was cocking it just then. It needs a little bit of a clunk to bring it up, but it's a very secure feeling lock-up on this. And even, I've got to say, now the light is catching it, the bluing on it as well is also surprisingly nice. A lot of guns you get in this sort of price point, they're more of a greying, if you know what I mean, instead of bluing. There's more of a grey look to them. Whereas on this, the bluing has got a really nice, it seems nice and deep, it's got a lovely blue tint to it as well, which is always nice to see. Again, it's not Vire-Arc level, but at the same time, it's not Vire-Arc money. But let's talk about shot cycle. As we said earlier, the Milbros can be funny creatures. So let's have a look, put it to the shoulder, give it a squeeze, and have a look at the shot cycle. So, right, let's give it a go. You can see a long trigger pull. There it goes. It's a little bit on the jumpy side. It's not, despite the weight and such of it, it's not the smoothest or tamest rifle that I've ever shot. It's definitely a bit of a kick to it there. Whether that will translate into poor accuracy, we don't know. This is something we've got to find out a bit later on. But there's definitely a bit of a jolt there. And again, with the weight that's already here, this is why we said earlier that it might not be the best junior's gun as such. But as a gun, how can I explain this? With guns you can feel, when you put it to your shoulder, it will give you a feeling of confidence, or it can make you think, do you know what, nah, I don't like that. You know, if you watch this channel a lot, I'm not a big fan of overly lightweight rifles. Yeah, you can, when it's a certain lightness, you can hold the thing on target quite easily, but I've been raised shooting heavier guns, and with this, I can, due to the extra weight, I personally can hold this thing really still. But again, it's a bit, as we said, Milbros are strange animals. I can hold it still, but that won't change the fact that when you pull that trigger, it's got a bit of kick to it. So that's handling pretty much out the way. But I wonder what it's doing through the chronograph, because these are listed as a full power rifle. But as we all know, what the advertisers say and what the guns can really do are usually two completely different things. So let's get the chrono out and let's say 20 shots as we usually do, and we'll weigh the pellets this time. I do listen to your recommendations. We'll get the pellets weighed, we'll put a few shots through and see what sort of consistency and power we can get out of the Milbro Sportsman. So, chronograph time. Okay then, so chronograph results. Pellets used were the Remington FTT pellets. The pellets themselves were weighed before we did the testing, and they came out on an average of a 14.5 grain instead of the 14.66 that they usually are. Now the results were quite interesting, because you may have noticed by, if I just pan the camera up for you, you can see we're actually in a different season now to when we we first started. I believe we started this review just at the end of summer. We are now absolutely into autumn. So as you can imagine, the rifle's been sitting for a while, as unfortunately we've had other appointments we've had to do instead of this review, and I'm sorry about that. This was supposed to be quick one and done sort of jobs. I was quite looking forward to doing this one, but other things got in the way. Enough of that. Let's have a look at the results. Well, we had a few hot shots, and I don't know, I hope you could see it in the camera. You probably couldn't, considering the angle it was at. And I think where it's sat for a while, perhaps a little bit of grease has moved around the spring. As you can see here, we've got, so I'll get that a bit more in focus for you, 607 FPS, which came out at 11.86 feet-pounds, which is a little too close to the limit in my opinion. I know spring guns do like a lighter pellet, and at 14.5 as these ended up being, that's pretty damn light, but well, it's the same weight as a Superdome, I believe, but it's still a little high, especially here when you've got 610 doing 11.98. But the results themselves, if we look at it from a completely neutral standpoint, they're not the best we've had. Standard deviation 6.72, which isn't terrible to be fair. Max spread 25 FPS, again not the worst we've had, not by a long shot, but it's not necessarily the best. As I said, I'm wondering if some grease has moved around in there since it's been sitting, because if you take a look, let's go back to the first view, you can see these were a little bit inconsistent. We had one there at 11.25, and you probably know the reason why I'm picking these out. You've got 11.25, 11.25 again up here. But as we get more towards the last few shots we was putting through, where the gun may have been burning through or had burnt out what was getting in its way, or at least some of it, you can see here 11.21, 11.21, 11.25, 11.25, 11.25. That's 3 in a row 11.25 there. 11.1, 11.36, and we get another little hot one, 11.71. We're back to around 11.4, 11.3ish again. So I think it's definitely going to be an 11.3 foot-pound gun when it's run in, which is definitely, as advertised with this rifle, it is a full power gun, we'll give it that. But it was just a little bit unfortunate that I think it's still sort of running itself in, and we had those hot shots come through. We've got that one there, 610, 11.98. And before we potentially put this one on sale, I think I'm going to put a good few pellets through it, say 100 or 200, just to make sure that it doesn't creep above that 12 mark. Otherwise work is going to have to be done. But overall, the gun is trying to be consistent. You can see here the average is 595 feet per second, which works out at around 11.38 foot-pound. If I've done my math correctly, probably not. But around 11.38 feet-pound, which is pretty much spot on. And you can see here, on average, it is, like you see, 11.25, 11.25, and we had the other two down here. It's trying to be a consistent gun, and this also leads more on to, like I said before, as a tuner's gun, I think there is a lot of potential with this rifle, I really do. Hopefully here, this might actually be a better shot where you might be able to see what I was talking about earlier, about the thickness of that cocking arm underneath. You can see there's a few little bits of flick on there. I've given it an oil, and well, it's got a little bit dirty over time as it's sat. I'll give that another wipe over before it goes back in the bag or the box when we're done with it, depending on if any work, like we said, has to be done to the gun itself. But that is a pretty chunky piece of kit sitting right there, especially when compared, as we once again mentioned earlier, to the other guns in this sort of price range, like the XS19s, things like that, where they've only got a very thin cocking arm. Again, they do the job, but it's not the same as that. It's very, very old school, I'll put it that way, which is the feeling you get when you're actually using that gun. But overall, chrono results wise, well, it's trying to be consistent, but the results, while not terrible, weren't the best on them that we've ever tested, we'll put it that way. It's about average, middle of the road sort of thing. Usually I like my spring guns to sit about 5-ish standard deviation, maybe a little bit lower than that, but 6.72 when the guns run in, I'm quite confident you'll probably be getting sub 5s all day. But this is how it's done today, and that's it. Like we do try to do, we don't cheat on these reviews. What the gun does is what the gun does. So that's it for consistency and power. But as we always say, that doesn't mean diddly squat in my experience when it actually comes to accuracy. I've had some tremendously consistent guns through the chrono that have shot like a scattergun when it comes to putting them out on against a target. So let's put some targets up at our 25-yard range, and let's see what the Milbro Sportsman can do. Now what we're going to do is, I'll do some pellet testing off screen. I'll keep the targets though, and I'll film the best group with the best pellet. So we'll see what it likes, but I won't waste too much of your time with that. Again, we'll try to get 25 yards, but as you can see, the farm is getting full up a bit at the moment. The wooden potato boxes aren't a major concern. That metal table is. But I'm sure I can probably creep around the corner here and still get some shots off. If you hear a loud bang, it's because I've hit the gas bottle and Big Dan is no more. But anyways, let's move on to our 25-yard accuracy testing and let's see what the Sportsman is all about. Okay, so accuracy test time. We've got the Milbro Sportsman all prepped and ready on the side here with the Conus 3 to 12 by 50 scope. And as we move along, you can see our pellets. And today we've got on the left-hand side our more budget-oriented pellets. The SMK Black BS55 dome pellets and the Wasps. Now these, as I'm sure you can tell, aren't the original Wasps from Ely. These are in fact the new style Wasps. However, I have had some pretty damn good results with them in different rifles, so we'll see what the Sportsman thinks of them. Moving along in the middle ground, we've got RWS Super Domes. Most people in the airgun community know just how good these pellets are. They've been out for absolutely yonks, and well, there's a good reason for that, and the fact they're still on sale. They're a very, very, very dependable pellet. Most people will say when you get a new spring gun, put Super Domes through it to see what it's capable of. To the right hand side, we've got the more premium stuff. We've got the Air Arms Diablo field pellets here, and down below we have the Rifle Premium Series pellets. So we've got a pretty good smatter of different pellets here. Now you may notice there's no, say, JSB and such down here, and I won't lie to you all, that's simply because I don't stock them yet, and I don't have any. I actually don't stock the Air Arms pellets, but yeah, I had some lying around and I thought, you know what, why not? So this is what we've got to work with today. You can see the ranges as mentioned at our 25-yard mark. So how we're going to do it this time is I'm going to have a few shots off camera with all the tins you can see here, and the one that groups the best is the one that we'll record and show you guys on screen so we don't take up too much time. So let's get to accuracy testing. Okay then, so Milbro Sportsman, 25 yards off of a rest. Well, this is the preliminary testing, what you can see here, what we didn't quite put on camera. As we said, we want to sort of streamline these videos a bit, as they was starting to get into the hour-long territory for one review, and if I can, I'll try to avoid that. You can see here we actually had a really nice cluster just off to the left of the bullseye, but unfortunately the rest of them was sprayed all over the place. If I'd have had more time for this review, as mentioned, this one has been a long time in the making due to other commitments. If I had a bit longer, I'd go back to this and maybe try weighing and sizing the pellets and trying again with Air Arms, because that is pretty damn good, what you've got right there. But unfortunately, again, it may be weight, it could be sizing, I don't know. We did also have some that sprayed off to the right over here. Next up is the Rifle Premium Series pellets, which you can see are a hell of a lot lower than the Air Arms pellets. And again, it's not a bad little cluster here. You've got 3 here, 1 here, and another 3 around here. Again, not too bad. The issue was the actual full group didn't actually make it to the target card. For some reason, we had some crazy flyers that impacted on the metalwork that holds the card in around here. So with that, it was pretty much a case of close but no cigar. Not too bad though. Moving on to the Super Domes, and a bit like the Air Arms pellets, you've got a really nice cluster here. You've got 4 in there, and I think that's 3. I think it's just 2 more spraying off to the left here. That's pretty good, but again, also like the Air Arms, we had a few flyers. But the interesting thing is, other than this one up here, my flyers were really consistent. That's probably the first time anyone's ever said that, but I mean, that's the point of a flyer, it's inconsistent. But my inconsistencies are consistent because both pellets landed right next to each other. But again, pretty good, but not quite good enough. Then we have the Wasps. Not terrible. We've got, say, these would fit in a 20p piece. Unfortunately, I don't have any coins on me at the moment. And again, we've got 2 touching off to the right, but it's not as good as the rest, if I'm being completely honest with you there. Makes me out to look a little bit like a liar, depending on, or considering how I was bigging them up before this video. But the actual winners were the SMK Blacks. And this is the before filming accuracy test. You can see we've almost got one solid cluster here, but unfortunately we had 2 flyers, almost same hole, but 2 flyers off to the right. And these really surprised me, because although they are a much better pellet than people give them credit for, I didn't expect them to maybe group this well. And the best bit was, when it actually come to filming, we got even luckier, because we've got one solid group here, and this is 8 pellets in this group, and admittedly we do have one flyer up here. Again, it wouldn't be Big Dan's Airguns if we didn't have that flyer, would it? Oh, I wish I could get rid of it though, I think I'm cursed. But we've got one group here which might just about fit under a 5p piece, and we've got the one up here. Again, you can't really complain about that, if I'm being brutally honest. Again, we get that if you zeroed, you imagine that group there with the one going up there, and again, for a budget air gun, spring gun, that's not too bad. Now, one thing that will be said, however, is when we talk about the accuracy, oh, there goes one of my, see what I mean about the wind? Let me just pan up so you can see what I've had to deal with today. My air arms group has gone flying. When we talk about the accuracy testing though, we also talk a bit more about how the gun handles and such, and when you're really concentrating, how the gun feels. Now obviously I was shooting off of a rest, which they are good with springers, but I've always found I personally tend to shoot maybe a little bit better shooting just off like the palm sort of thing, off the hand. But what I will say, despite the accuracy what this thing can achieve, because it definitely seems as though it has got a really accurate barrel on it, it does kick quite a lot, which is probably, again, the recoil may have been the cause of that. And again, you had 2 flies even bucking off to the right over there, and we've got a few flies on here. It does kick quite a lot, and that trigger pull is very agricultural, I'll put it that way. It's not smooth, it's not light, it's quite heavy, it's quite creepy, and it's in general not that nice. In fact, the way that I found that I grouped the best when I was shooting this was, instead of having a very soft and steady trigger pull like I usually do and then pop, off it goes, with this I found it was best to find it where it just about felt the biting point, and then not yank it, but give it a very positive boom, and off it goes. Yeah, I don't usually like doing that because it feels like it's going to throw me off target, but where the trigger on this is so heavy, and the people who designed this, I hope you're watching this, because you do already have the gear to improve this. Like I said, the Explorer trigger, for instance, it's so heavy it can throw you off. We're about to lose that in a second. It can throw you off, and again, it's worth bearing in mind. It could be tuners might be able to get their hands on this and give it maybe that trigger a little bit of a polish or something like that, but it's not the best trigger on in the planet, and I don't know, if you're looking for that, it might be worth looking elsewhere. It's no Remington unit, I'll put it that way. But to be honest with you, accuracy wise, let's just pan back over here to our best groups. I'm not disappointed, definitely not disappointed. So that's it for our accuracy testing. Next up, let's move on to final verdict and see just what we think of the Milbro Sportsman. Okay then, so Milbro Sportsman, final verdict, what do we think? It's a strange one, because on one hand it's got a ton of potential. It's made well. It's such a sturdy thing when you put it to your shoulder and you feel the weight of it, and it's a broad rifle as well. It's not like a lot of like the Gamos and such that are on the market that you put them in your hand and they're a bit thin sort of thing. Doesn't it maybe inspire with that much confidence? And again, it's not just Gamo. Some people might even say that about the XS19 or something like that. It's a little bit more slender in the palm. This is a brute, pure and simple. In fact, I think that term pretty much explains this rifle through and through. It is maybe a slightly unsophisticated brute. If you're after something out the box that is going to be practically recoilless, have a nice trigger, something like that, this won't really be it, I've got to be honest. As mentioned, we've got to be as honest as possible. The trigger is heavy. It's heavy and it's a bit on the creepy side. And to top it all off, as we've said, it's a heavy gun in general. It's not going to be the most pointable thing on the market. That being said, and why I said this is going to be a tuner's delight, or just someone who wants to get into a bit of old school shooting, the accuracy, as you can see here through our testing, is pretty much on point, to be honest. Shooting at 25 yards, you can see there's our first group that we did with the SMK Blacks, and that, thankfully, the one we caught on film was the better group, to be honest, because I was expecting it to be the complete other way around, the way that things have been going lately. But yeah, thankfully the actual good group was the one we caught on film. But it is an accurate rifle. The barrel on it seems pretty damn good, and again, we mentioned the build quality because even the bluing is nice. The bluing is nice on this, the metalwork is absolutely on point, and even the checkering, if I can get the camera close enough, hopefully you can see just how deep that actually is on there. It's a nice bit of wood, it really is. Again, why I say tuner, if you don't really like the colour of it, it is a little bit bright, if I'm being honest, a little bit orangey maybe. Put a bit of tan on that, make it a bit more brown, you know, tan. You can tell I'm from Essex, or in Essex we'll say, not from Essex. But put a bit of oil on that to darken it up a bit, and that would be a lovely stock. But the gun's not a completely unsophisticated brute, shall we say. You have got that, it's always a nice little feature to have. You've got the anti-creep mount there built into the scope rail, and on the rear you have got an automatic safety, and it's a nicely finished automatic safety as well. Granted, I think it is plastic, but it's got a very nice heavy clunk to it when you use the thing. And like we've said about the rifle in general, it just overall helps with its overall robust sort of feel. The gun this is going to suit, other than tuners, will be the sort of person that's been shooting for a long time, or was shooting a long time ago in the past, and it's the sort of gun that will take them back to those days. It's just got that very old school feel to it, and it almost has the lines of an oldish sort of British gun to it. You take away the fibre optic sights and such, and you could almost say this was an old BSA or something like that. It's just got that feel to it. And another positive, of course, for those wanting to use it for hunting, it is definitely a full power rifle. A bit too full power here, so we're going to run some more testing on it, make sure it's behaving itself, and it's well, let's just say it's not going to put anybody into a stay at Her Majesty's prison anytime soon, a free stay. So we'll do a bit more testing on that a bit later on. But overall, I think it's a rifle that's got its flaws, but it's also got an absolute ton of character, and the most important thing for those out there handy with a spanner, a ton of potential. Anyways, that's it for this review. Thanks ever so much for watching. If you got any questions or want to leave a request for a review, get in touch with us down below, put a comment down. I do try to read every single one of my comments and reply back, so let us know what you think and get in touch. If you want any more information about the Milbro rifles and such, you can get in touch with us at bigdansairguns.co.uk, and again, leave us an email and we'll get in touch with you ASAP. Thanks for watching everyone, and take care. Okay then, so I thought it was a little bit of extra bonus footage. We'd chronograph the Sportsman once again, just to see if there's any change after we put a few pellets through the gun compared to when we first started. Now, this was also requested by a few of our commenters, and it's a pretty good idea to show originally what the gun can do more or less out the box, and what it can do afterwards when it's had a few shot through it, just to see if there's any differences. Now, the only thing I will confess to is that at the minute we are completely out of stock of the Remington FTT pellets, so we've had to find the closest competitor, shall we say, when it comes to weight, and that for me is the RWS Superdome, which I don't know if you can make that out or not, come in at 14.5 grain. The Remington HN FTTs come in at 14.66, so we're almost there, but there is going to be a little bit of a difference there. Now, to be fair, it's the higher power that I'm mainly going to be looking out for. We always test every gun that comes in, and I don't like the idea of, as we may have already said, potentially sticking guns out there that could land our customers in trouble. So the fact that this is a lighter pellet in a spring gun will usually send the power higher than if you put a heavyweight pellet in there like a Barracuda or something like that. PCPs, it can be different. The only times that anything seems to go against that rule is with JSBs and air arms, because they've got a very thin skirt and it seems to, despite their weight, zip them out there pretty quick. But these are very they're a bit of an old school pellet, but they'll give us a genuine idea as to what the gun's doing, and as said, seeing as they're slightly a lighter pellet anyway, it should, if anything, the power be even higher than what we have with the FTT. So if it's running a little bit more and the power is still sub 12, comfortably sub 12, then we know everything is absolutely good as gold, and it should hopefully make for an interesting little segment on the end here. So let's run another few pellets through it and let's see what the Sportsman can do. Okay then, just to recap, here's the first group that we did when we originally started filming this review. Now hopefully you can see that. You can see we had one up here, 1167, 1102, we had a, if we keep going, Here we go, 1171, 1198. Now this was with the FTTs, and it did get a little too close to the limit for my liking there, 11.98. But the other important thing, or the most important thing to be looking at, well, this won't land you in prison, but again, it shows what the gun's capable of and what they're like out of the box. Standard deviation is 6.72, and spread is 25 FPS. So now, if we click back, and we now load up our string that we just did, you can see here, Sportsman Superdome 2.2, and let's take a look over here. Already, the standard deviation has dropped below 4 feet per second over 20 shots. And the maximum spread is only 13 FPS. Now if we go to the start, now take a look at this. First shot 584, second shot 585, third shot 584, fourth shot 585. You had 4 shots off the bat with only a 1 foot per second spread. That's impressive no matter what brand rifle it is. I mean, then things do sort of go back to the norm. Like immediately after that, you can see we've got 11.13, 588. The main one that upset the apple cart was this little one here, 596. Our one hot shot, which even so we say hot, was still only 11.44 foot-pound. So we can see now just how much, let's just scroll up so you can have another look up here. So we can see now just how much of a difference it makes running a gun in and shooting a gun through. And also just the difference from a gun out the box, the numbers it's putting out, shall we say, compared to the spread afterwards. And we might start doing this, if you guys don't mind, if you like this, we might start doing this with each spring gun review maybe, if it's a new gun, breaking it straight out the box, having a early little session with it, putting a few shots through and seeing what they're doing, like we say, fresh out the box, and then when we're done, put it through again so you can see just how much the gun's loosened up, bedded in, and you can see it really starts to like come into its own sort of thing. Anyways, I thought I'd tack this on the end here as you guys did request it, and let us know what you think. If you want to see a bit more of this, let me know. If not, again, let me know, and we'll either chuck it or keep it. Thanks for watching, guys, and as said before, we'll see you next time.